All righty. Welcome to another edition of Vegas Badboyz of Podcasting. I'm DJ Impact, and I have Sin City Steve with us here tonight. And we're gonna be your bad boys here. We record this on Halloween night, and for those who are watching, happy Halloween to you. For those who's listening, it's after Halloween. Hopefully, you had a great holiday if you do celebrate in any way. So, this is our 3 count. We got 3 good topics for you, and we're gonna get right into it. And if you're watching us, definitely use your Facebook chat messenger to put in whatever comments you have, and we'll try to get them in as we see fit. All right, Sin City, let's jump right into it. This is our first count from Sports Illustrator here. It's called Chronic Mismanagement Spelled the Demise of Ring of Honor as We Know It. So let's just read a little bit of what they're saying. It says ROH, which on multiple occasions redefined the wrestling space, announced Wednesday that is effectively going to cease operation as a full-time company. ROH COO Joe Koff, I'll say his name is, hopefully that's correct, who's an executive for Sinclair Broadcast Group, which is ROH parent company, held a Zoom call for talent to explain the specifics. That included everyone being released from their contract. Not everyone from the roster, however, was on the call, which left multiple people, including some of the top talent, unaware of the massive change. And Sports Illustrated confirmed from multiple sources that the contracts expiring on or before March 31st, 2022 will be paid out for the duration of the deal. Contracts extended beyond March 31st will necessitate individual meetings between the talent and Sinclair management, most likely to come to terms on a buyout. Now, ROH's first event, the Era of Honor Begins, took place February 2002. The promotion was known among industry insiders as a welcome alternative from WWE and featured emerging stars like CM Punk, Samoa Joe, Bryan Danielson, and Nigel McGuinness. Its financial situation changed significantly on 2011 when Sinclair purchased the promotion. Yet, despite all the benefits of being owned by a major force in broadcasting, ROH never took the steps necessary to become a top player in the industry. It always lacked a signature television show, one that would air on a consistent time and night, even though there were executives within the company, including Koff, who continued to spread the idea that one was coming. Whoever thought Impact Wrestling would outlast Ring of Honor? This is a devastating development for the talent, who now have one less place to work. And while the pandemic will ultimately bear the brunt of blame, it is simply not fair to use that as an excuse. When speaking with multiple ROH talent and former office employees, they all shared the same sentiment, telling Sports Illustrated that the end of the company is the result of mismanagement from the top. All right, I'm going to stop there, Sin City. I'll tell you first that I was shocked. I'm disappointed. I'm saddened. I normally would do the reviews or of what happened of Ring of Honor on our wrestling talk. I did notice, like I had told you last week, it was a little weird to not see any television programming on at all, which they had even promoted what was going to be the following week's match, and it didn't take place. And I mean, this is just really sad to know that, Ring of Honor, I still have a lot of questions. I mean, people are going to be released from the contract, but yet they're going to restructure and become they're going to start back up in April of next year. How is that supposed to look? I mean, what talent's supposed to be available? One thing for sure is that I'm going to have to agree with one of the sentences in here that it said that at the end, the company is the result of mismanagement from the top. And bottom line, that's probably what came out of this. When I first got the news, someone had mentioned to me, well, they paid their guys during the pandemic. And I'm like, yeah. And I thought that was great. And I mean, I work for a company who paid us during the pandemic. I think a lot of us did. And they probably went a lot longer than some of the other promotions, but I don't think it was just that. There was a lot more. And I think this article really dig deep into that, especially considering you have access to a television network and you can't get a specific day and a specific time to lock it in. That just doesn't make sense. Let me start with you. What was your take on this particular article and everything you've been finding out about Ring of Honor since it's appears to be no more?
The thing that I can definitely mention, and the thing that stands out to me the most is, Justin Barrasso is a great journalist. He definitely painted the picture so that even if you weren't familiar with the announcement itself or what happened,
Right.
he did a great deal of framing things in a way that, yes, it's going to add some insight to the events that happened before he actually launched in and discussed certain things.
Yeah.
I completely agree with everything that Justin had mentioned in this article.
Yeah.
And the biggest thing is that you hit the nail on the head. You are a television production company, a television network. Granted, yes, syndication, but at the end of the day, you cannot have a specific time and date
Right.
for your flagship show. Or according to this, there is no flagship show.
Right.
I mean, even there for a while before this purchase from Sinclair, they had, granted, yes, they were on HDNet, but still it was a destination show.
Right.
And that was always something that really stood out to me and just didn't sit well with me that, okay, why the hell is this going on? If anybody would have thought that a television company, like a company that owns multiple networks, multiple TV stations,
right,
if that is the company that's actually going to buy a pro wrestling company, wouldn't you think that they would be the company that has good production values, if not great production values?
Right.
Ring of Honor, they're especially during the pandemic, it brought to light that their production value was the worst out of all of your major all of your major wrestling companies.
For starters,
the framing of everything, it was terrible. They
were late starting, while everybody else was like, okay, look, just put a ring out there. Either AEW said, hey, wrestlers, you're going to make up the people around the ring. And WWE at the beginning said, hey, it's just going to be nobody. It doesn't matter. Everyone's trying to figure this out. Okay. Impact at the moment had to step away, but they finally figured it out and they got going. But Ring of Honor was just really like, it was almost like they wasn't even thinking at the point. And when they did come back, which was great, it was almost like, like they just said, okay, I guess we should try to throw it back on. Like, I guess we should try to do something. That's how it appeared to be, not the wrestlers, but from a business aspect. Because even when they started going back to having live shows, they still wasn't having live shows. They did one live with an audience pay-per-view. And since then, they still been running shows with nobody. And I'm like, why? I'm not understanding. So at some point, it just seemed like, I don't know, they just was just giving up from the beginning or what, I don't know. But it doesn't make sense.
It's terrible, man, to be honest. And, you look at names that had been there from the beginning. I mean, guys like Kerry Silkin, who was an absolute figurehead for that company for years. It's almost like as if it was all for naught. And that's, I think, one of the biggest crimes with all of this is, they're just being kind of thrown to the wayside. And, now they're saying, oh, well, yeah, we're going to be resuming operations in April.
Right.
Okay. Well, how necessarily are you going to do that? Are they going to operate specifically as an indie fed? And the answer to that, from what I'm hearing, is yes. They're not going to have contracted superstars. They're not going to have anybody that they can really rely on. And at the end of the day, their champions, if they pick back up and start again, their champions could be sniped from them at any point in time by AEW, by Impact, by WWE. So, I mean, I don't see them coming back whatsoever, man. I hate to say it, but if they do come back, then it's just going to be essentially them running just shows with no continuity, unless they happen to get people to agree on a handshake that they're going to be at their shows. So
yeah, absolutely. And Chris here, who's on our chat, said that JR said years ago on his podcast that if Ring of Honor would get better lighting for their TV tapings, they could be more seriously as a weekly competitive brand. There's no doubt, man, that the talent on that show was just amazing. And even before, a lot of the guys that were that are on AEW now that were part of Ring of Honor, Cody Rhodes and the Young Bucks, and you go down the list. Omega, yeah. I mean, like even then, despite the fact, and I don't know, I'm sure, and I don't know, you may know this more. Maybe with what Cody and Young Bucks, from what I was reading, they were asking, I guess, for more money. But I would have say, okay, great, ask for more money, but why not demand for a better vision of Ring of Honor? You know what I'm saying? Then exactly. The money would come, because Ring of Honor probably felt they really couldn't pay them what they were worth based on what was happening. But why not? Because let's be honest, if we didn't have Tony Khan, right, there would not be AEW. So, and you didn't know you were going to have Tony. So at the time, I don't know why these guys didn't focus on getting the Ring of Honor management to invest, into making it what it should be, and there was some sort of failure or disconnect with this whole thing. And I just don't get it, man. I just really feel sorry for all the guys. And, I feel that there's going to be a place, and it doesn't matter to me. I just say, as long as you got work, it doesn't matter. Sure, I can have my own picks on where I would like to see here and there, but hey, as long as they're somewhere and they're getting paid and their talent is getting over, that's all I really care about from this point. And Ring of Honor, they had, it was gold, and I just don't understand. Even their announcers, man, Rick Abani, he's perfect. He needs to be. I could put a few places he could just remove some and just take their spot right there.
Please, if you're Tony Khan, please pick up the phone, call Ian Riccaboni, get him on your show now. Thank you.
Absolutely. Dude, that's a steal. So yeah, man. Oh boy. Well, hey, we'll see what happens. We'll keep our eyes on all of that. And they still have a pay-per-view they got coming up, one in December. So they still have one, and more than likely there's going to be they're probably going to really get a buy-in on that, just from the fact that people knows, what's to happen. So we'll see how all of that goes, man. So yeah, it's
sad, man. At the end of the day, it's sad more than anything else. And the production values, the fact that it looks like as if they're wrestling in a garage.
Right.
It was doomed from the start. When after the purchase, when they didn't take some of those, some of the profits or some of the money from Sinclair and put it back into the product. Right. Hindsight's always 20/20, brother. We should have known that this would have happened at some point. It sucks for the talent, and it sucks for, you know, everybody that went out there and dedicated themselves to this brand and this company. And, you know, it's tough, dude. It's tough. And unfortunately, now there's one less place for people to earn a living in the world of pro wrestling.
Right. Yeah. I mean, that's the reason why, hey, I know you may be a huge WWE fan, and let's say you don't care for AEW, or you love AEW and don't care for WWE. And then when I mention Impact, you have everyone just straight laugh. But this is the reason why I think it's important to give, show your love for Impact, because they could be in that same situation too. And they got good stuff going on. How can we not sit and watch what we just watched for what they did last week live, and to see all of that go away just because you feel because they're not in some 20,000 seated stadium, or they're not on Prime TV network. If you have the ability to watch, to be a part, to purchase, if you have that option, do it. Why not? It's good. And then you even appreciate them more when you do see them maybe leave and go up to another production. You appreciate that even more. It's because you've seen where they've come from. Right now, this is the time to be giving Impact Wrestling your love. And I'm not saying they're not in that position, but it just when you see one, it doesn't take much to start to see others. I mean, NWA, right? We don't have them anymore. I mean, I'm just saying. So if you love wrestling, love wrestling. That's all I'm gonna say. You just love it, even from the small indie promotion, something like Future Stars of Wrestling, which we promote here. If you have the opportunity to watch these guys grow from somebody coming off the street who decide they want to train and now become a wrestler, and you're able to come to the shows, cheer them on, and watch, all of that is necessary to keep the business going. So that's what I say about that, man. Let's jump over to number 2, which is from Pro Wrestling News Hub.com. It's titled, Tony Schiavone says AEW will have streaming service in 2022. So let's just read the quote, because they wanted to know, how does he feel about AEW will be having the streaming service in 2022. So let's just read what he says. He says, yes, I do. I think we're going to see a streaming service. This is my thought. I don't know anything for sure. Just by talking to people, I think there's going to be a streaming service by the end of 2022. I do know that there are people in Warner Media that I knew, that I still know, that have nothing to do with AEW, that told me, that AEW is going to be a part of HBO Max. I remember asking somebody in the front office, not Tony Khan, are you going to be on HBO Max? They said, yeah, until they want to come up with a lot more money. And I think we're going to end up getting our own streaming services. I'm just trying to fill in all the blanks here from what I've heard. It's not really on Tony's radar right now, but I'm sure there are people in the office that are working that out for him. And that's the end quote. So I guess the question I would ask you, Sin City, a streaming service, do you see a purpose for that right now? Or even, and if we wouldn't even say in the future, even a year from now? And I question this because, let's be real, when it comes to some of the ratings, we kind of thought AEW would definitely be hitting the million on a weekly basis, maybe even a little bit more than that. Do you think it's really at this time to be considering starting some sort of a streaming service within the next year?
I think that they could. And the fact of it is this, we've talked at length on here about how BTE is not canon for AEW, and how they run particular storylines and jokes and things like that on BTE, which is a YouTube show,
right.
But also AEW Dark and AEW Dark Elevation. Okay, well, why not have those things on their own private streaming service? You could easily have more cohesion and more continuity between their product if you have the AEW network be a one-stop shop.
But where would they get all the content? I mean, WWE has, they have a library, so they can run.
Yeah.
Well, hell, I don't know why. For a minute when I said WWE, I was thinking before they actually signed over to Peacock, which is still right. But I'm going back even to the old school way that it was of a streaming service. They had a huge library. What kind of content would AEW have for streaming on a,
Well, keep in mind what was Count One?
Well, Count One was about the demise of Ring of Honor.
Okay. You mean to tell me that they don't have a tape library that's up for sale right now?
Yeah, but I think in that same story, it says something about the fact they wanted some outrageous price, more than what the market. But I forget. Boy got tons of money.
Do you think Tony Khan gives 2 drops of piss about how much money it costs?
I forgot about that. Yeah.
If that guy wants it, he's gonna get it.
Right.
And
right.
So keep this in mind. Ring of Honor actually technically owns the right to the first All In, which was the precursor to AEW's launch.
Okay.
Ring of Honor, that library, you would instantly have access to matches with the Young Bucks, with Cody, with Kenny Omega for years. Kenny wrestled in Ring of Honor as far back as 2008 or yeah. So, it's one of those things that, it would make perfect sense. CM Punk got his start there. So I think that you could very easily make a use case for Tony Khan to purchase the tape library. And at that point, so yes, you would be able to then segue it into the current product. You could have things from NWA as well. So basically everyone that Tony Khan has worked with, short of Impact, you could have stuff from any of those promotions on the All Elite network. So I think the question there are a lot of moving parts though. It really depends on, how much they want to implement at the end of the day, and if they think it would be a success. You also have to keep in mind what your price point is going to be in order to run a streaming platform and have a user base that will be streaming those things and using that bandwidth. And
what do you think about this idea of HBO Max possibly being a player in that? I have HBO Max.
I think that's very interesting because I hadn't linked AEW to HBO Max whatsoever.
I hadn't either.
But when this article mentioned it, I was like, holy shit, that actually could be legit. If they take a look at everything, and if they take a look at their operating costs to run a streaming network, which will be used by millions of people across the world, then it's going to be one of those things that is that the type of expense that they want to come up with and actually put forth and set aside on their balance sheets every single month, every year. If it's not, well, then I think that we may have our answer right here in this quote.
When WWE had when they had their network, they had 10 million subscribers, right? It was around that many. Do you even think, at least as of right now, even a year, that they would even get, not I don't even say 10 million, I'll say just 1 million subscribers, AEW. They could. I don't know. I think it would be a tough sell.
So keep in mind,
at some point they would
hit 1 million in the US. I think you're having issues. But if you take it worldwide,
that's true.
You can't tell me that there are people in other countries that aren't getting live AEW products traveling to them.
True.
That wouldn't want to be able to watch everything that ever occurred in an AEW ring in one place.
It's just like with New Japan.
Bingo.
Right. Gotcha. Perfect, man. All right. Well, we'll keep our eyes open and see what happens with that. All right, let's go over to number 3 here. It's from sportskita.com, and it's titled, "That's the Problem with Wrestling." WWE veteran Dutch Mantel highlights one of the major issues with the industry. All right. And I guess he recently highlighted a significant issue, and this is kind of what he said it is. Quote, "What is the difference between pro wrestling and pro football other than one's produced and one's not? What's the difference between pro basketball and pro wrestling, or pro baseball, or even NASCAR? The reason is they have seasons. The season begins and the season ends. Pro wrestling doesn't have a season, and that's the problem with wrestling. If you have football every week, tell me what would happen to ratings. When it's on all the time, you wouldn't want to watch it. But that is the state of pro wrestling finds itself in. It's wrestling, and they just go to the next pay-per-view or the next week's TV." And whoa. Does he make a point there, Sin City? I know you are a huge fan of the Steelers football. If the Steelers were on every week, at some point, will you feel like, maybe can miss a few games, a few weeks? Maybe I'll come back. Maybe that's a good point. If he's got a point, and that could be what it is, what could, and is there any way? We know WWE are content providers. I guess you could say AEW is the same too. What do you do in this manner, or do you not do anything, from this point?
So I think the thing that we really should consider is, we've talked in the past how talent rosters have been so bloated between different promotions. I genuinely think that one thing that we could do is we could easily rotate in and rotate out some of these talents. There's no reason that, let's just throw it out there. Roman Reigns. Okay. Only because he's in a video that's embedded in this page. Yeah. So, okay. Roman Reigns, think about it this way. When he went away, and because he was struggling with, his leukemia, right? Obviously he was endeared by, the fans at that point. Before then, they were kind of lukewarm to him. And it's one of those types of situations where when he came back, he was white hot. Right. Like, everybody was so stoked to see him. Yeah. And, that's one example. But you got to figure, how often is it that when you have a particular wrestler that you are a big fan of, and they're gone for a little while, maybe they're injured, or maybe they're taking some time, whatever it is, when they come back, you flip out, you lose your shit. You are so happy to see them. Right. Yep. So I think that it definitely does play in. I don't think that we need to have an off season like what Dutch is saying. Right. But I think that it wouldn't hurt to rotate in and rotate out talents. Of course, you're going to have to do it with tact, and you're going to have to do it in a way that, makes it look like it's somewhat organic. Unless you choose to just, go down the path of, we have X amount of weeks left of Roman Reigns showing up on our show, or whatever it is. But realistically, they could easily keep all of that shit kayfabe, and they could give these guys some off time instead of having them on the road, every single week for TV and stuff like that. Now, granted, with the pandemic, they're not traveling 300 days a year, right, as they were pre-pandemic. But I definitely think that it could endear the crowd to those people that maybe have gotten stale, or that, the fans have gotten tired of seeing. So I think that, yes, that will if nothing else, that will allow talent to recharge their batteries. That will allow them to, get themselves right mentally and physically, and allow them to do this for a longer period of time, because they're not killing themselves week in and week out for 52 weeks a year.
I mean, considering, so after SummerSlam, your next big event would be Survivor Series. So I know between that you have 3 months or so, and I guess the season premiere just started this week. So let's just say season premiere starts November. So maybe in the month of October, or it could be right after SummerSlam, maybe in September. What if from that point the programming, let's say there wasn't WWE Raw and SmackDown, but it got replaced with NXT during that time, and and running that during that time, and then after the month you bring back as a new season. I don't know, it's just kind of a thought. And the same thing could say with AEW, after whatever the next, that major event, All Out or whatever, you take that month, and maybe the YouTube show Dark, now that runs that month, and then the following, maybe something like that could possibly. But I mean, the idea though that you're going to have lower numbers because people just how do you don't want that to happen. You don't like the ideas of just saying, well, that's just how that is, because it's harder to grab those numbers to go higher than it is for them to drop. And if all that really takes is even to pretend like there's a season, even if you take a month off, versus we know in sports you're taking maybe up to 6 months off, that 1 month could be enough, So your NXT now is your prime show, your Dark now is your prime show that are on these networks just for that month, and then you come back with the new season. I don't know, would that something like that work? I mean, it's still content, so you bring up a really good point. I think the one thing that would kind of alienate some viewers possibly would be if you tune in every week, because case in point, the old NXT. Okay, NXT 1.0.
Yeah. Let's use that as an example. Mm-hmm. Okay. If you're a huge fan of NXT 1.0 and how it was the work rate show of the week, you knew that you were going to get blow away matches. You knew that the in-ring product was going to be absolutely solid. You knew that the talent roster was going to behave a certain way once that bell rang. Right. And then if they would come on and say, oh, next week on the season finale, it's so-and-so versus so-and-so. And then that match happens. And then they start the marketing gimmick for NXT 2.0 season premiere next week. Right. And it's completely different. It has a new look. It has a new roster. I think that could be pretty jarring to a lot of people and a lot of viewers, especially if you're just by nature rotating in people that have a completely different style in ring. Yeah. And if you're making that distinction between the two, it can alienate some people because they may not like NXT 2.0 as much as they liked NXT 1.0, or not at all. But even if that's the case, at least, you're going to have a drop in ratings, period, just for the fact that you're bringing in NXT or Dark with my examples. You're going to have a drop in ratings, but at least that's okay, because that's what you're kind of wanting to do, just so that when you start your new season again, you've kind of now given the fan, I guess, a break, if you want to say that. And now when they come back, they're rejuvenated to start over again. If you're going by the thoughts of what Coulter is saying, right. Yeah, exactly. And now I think the one thing that we need to think about as well is, we're talking about things from WWE's perspective or the fans' perspective. Let's think for a second about what NBC Universal wants. Sure. When they ink that TV deal, they're expecting to get WWE Raw 52 weeks a year.
Right.
They're
Yeah.
not expecting to get AEW. They're not expecting to get WWE Raw, 48 weeks a year, or 36 weeks a year.
Sure.
And the balance being NXT. So I think that could be another thing to where,
in the future that could be contracted, right? I mean, they could, if they wanted to.
It could.
Yeah.
But it would require a lot of planning, and it would require a complete buy-in from that particular network, which that's something key to consider. At the end of the day, it's all about business.
Yeah.
It's all about revenue generation and content creation. So I think that if WWE went into the negotiations for a TV deal saying, hey, we want to do this, but we want to rotate in talent, and basically half the year, or 3/4 of the year, it's going to be WWE Raw, but the other quarter of the year, we're going to give these guys some time to relax, and we're going to bring up our developmental stars, and that's who's going to be on NXT. We'll rebrand it as NXT for that week, hypothetically speaking, of course. But I think that there might be some sort of trepidation from the networks to not have a consistent branding across the year, every year, for the duration of the contract.
Yeah. Gotcha.
Because also keep in mind DVR numbers, DVR bookings. So if the way that a lot of DVRs are set up now is, it's set up to record WWE Raw or WWE NXT on those particular days. Now, if you change the show to, whatever WWE, whatever you change the name to, now there you run the risk of DVRs not recording that show, thus leading to reduced ratings, thus leading to reduced revenues, and that could be the problem.
That too, yeah. Well, it's definitely something, and maybe it's one of those things where, you're just gonna have to deal with. I mean, they've been doing this for all these years now, so it is what it is. But the crazy thing is, we do remember, and of course, that's a whole different topic. I mean, we remember when numbers were when WWE was in the threes, on USA or whatever. But
6,
right? Yeah,
Attitude Era,
right? But again, that's a different time, I guess, different place, and all of that. So, I would love to see it go back up, but it is what it is. So, good stuff, Sin City. Appreciate you there. That's our 3 count, guys. Thank you for hanging out. And final thoughts. I guess for me, I just tell you guys just to continue to be safe out there. We're now starting officially the holiday season, so there's going to be just a lot of movement going forward, and just be careful out there, and respect one another, because that's something that I think the world is lacking, just to be honest. So we're going through the holiday season, and everybody's going to want something. One thing we're beginning to see right now in a lot of retail is, we've learned that a lot of product is sitting out on a ship that can't get on these trucks and hit retailers. So we're seeing product that's not getting the stores. So stores going to be very limited, and it's just going to be in just an all out sort of craziness this holiday, because what you won't be able to get. So, just things to keep in mind, it'd be a good idea then that you might want to start now than to wait last minute, but just respect and, truly love everybody as you should, and keep it moving. That would be my final thoughts. What's your Sin City? What do you want to tell the people?
That was profound, Impact.
Stop it.
Thank you guys for liking, sharing, subscribing, doing all the stuff that you guys do every single week. We appreciate everything that you do. So thank you.
Absolutely.
Also, special thank you to every brave man and woman serving this country, whether you're on lands foreign or domestic. We appreciate you. You allow us to do what we do and what we love to do, and everything that we can do. So definitely, we appreciate everything and all of your sacrifices. Special shout out to our boy, the Storm and Mormon, John. We love you.
Yes.
And
absolutely.
Last but not least, repsports.com, reppsports.com. Go there for all of your pre-workout, weight loss, and general energy needs. Repsports.com. Use promo code Vegas at checkout and save yourself 15%.
Yes, absolutely. All right, guys, we appreciate you. Hopefully we'll have the Falco Fowls back on Wednesday. If you didn't hear last week's show, we didn't have Joe on. And of course, as most of you may know who watched the show, he did lose his mother. But it was a great episode last week because we played some highlights of just different parts, some old school the Falco Fowls. There were specific parts of the show that we wanted to get the take of Matt Michaels. And I tell you, just really listening to that was just amazing. If you never listened to it, if you listen to the Falco Files, if you at least listen to last week's, I think that would get you to want to listen to all the past the Falco Files. And they also did an awesome tribute also to him, his family. A lot of the wrestlers out there who's trained with him, they did an awesome tribute at the end of that episode. So it's really sentimental, but it's just awesome. If you haven't get a chance to listen to that, make sure you download the Falco Files from last week, and hopefully we'll have a new one for you tomorrow if you're listening to this on your podcast. All right. So with that, we will see you next time. Take care